Shema mina, mitzvot tzrichot kavana. So since the Mishnah states that if he directed his mind to it, which means that a person, when he says Shema, he have to have full focus of every word he said. Shema mina, you learn from that, mitzvot tzrichot kavana, which means that the Mishnah said that commandment require intent. That's a very important discussion we're going to enter today, which is the whole idea when you are saying any type of prayer, particularly the prayer of Shema and Amidah, is that the kavanah, the full intent, is a conditional or not. Why it's so crucial? It's because there are those whom you see who hold the opinion that if you don't have the proper intent, you do not fulfill the obligation. It's called yatzah yedei chovato. You do not fulfill the obligation by saying it. So in other words, if you have a lip service, you're just moving your lips, so there is an opinion that you did not fulfill the mitzvah. Ma'im kiven libo. So the Gemarah asks a question. If you tell me that when you do a mitzvah, you fulfill the obligation, you fulfill it, if not, then what happened if while he is doing that, he focus, then he fulfill, but what happened if not? They said here, v'hakakare. If a person is not, let's say you're just reading the Torah. You're reading the Torah for yourself. Either you are scribe, that you are writing the Torah in your hands and then you saying the word, or you practice, or you're just reading the Torah for all kind of reasons. And all of a sudden there's a time of Shema, and now you're focusing on Shema. So the question is, if you tell me that you have to have a special kavanah, a special intent, so how good is it if you are just reading the Torah, and by the way, this is the time to say Shema? So the Gemarah said, Bekor le'agia, which means that is a important part in the Torah reading, that we have to lehagia, which means we need to go over the text to make sure that there's no mistakes. For example, like you see last weekend, if you have Torah that you cannot use because there's a missing something, one of the things that should be done before you read the Torah, you need to go over the text to make sure if it's a questionable Torah, if everything is written there, it's properly written. One of the mistakes that people made, buying the Torah and they think it's forever. It should be a perpetuated fund, because the reality is that over the time, over the years, especially if you don't use it often, that it carries dust and deterioration of words. So there's a common idea that you're taking either a scribe or a person who knows, and he's going lehagia, he's going over the words to make sure that nothing missing. So now imagine a situation. A person is going lehagia, he's reading over the text. In order just to make sure that there's no mistake, boom, now it's a time to say Shema. So if he's saying now Shema, is that a fulfillment of a mitzvah or not? So this is his opinion here. If the whole purpose of you reading the Torah is just to correct mistake, and you don't even think about anything else, is that fulfillment or not? So the Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbi said, let's go deeper. So they said, Kriyat Shema Kichtava, right? Which means the way that you should say Shema, it's Shema Israel, the way that it's written in Hebrew. That's the opinion of Rabbi. Another idea is they ask, V'chachamim urim bechol hashon. The sages said you can say it in Spanish or in English, right? You can say it in Spanish, right? So they ask a question, what's the idea of Rabbi that insisted that it should be only in Hebrew? So he emphasized on the word, V'hayu advarim ha'ele, and this word we shall command you, it should be upon your heart. So the Gemarah asks a question, when you use the word V'hayu kemashma'an, the V'hayu meaning that this word should be, what is this word should be if it's not a Hebrew? The way that it's written originally, it's in Hebrew. So the Gemarah emphasized, they said Bahavayatan, which means Kemot shehem yihiyu, which means you cannot change from the original language, which is a Hebrew. Why? It's simple, because it's written Shema Israel. What is Shema? Shema is to understand and to hear, right? And Shema, part of Shema is להבין, to understand. בכל לשון שאתה שומע. So the sages hold that since you do not fully understand Hebrew, if you hear people speak Hebrew, you not comprehend the conversation. So therefore, the sages disagree with Rabbi, and they said, but in every language that you understand, you should say it. Now we go deeper to the meaning, deeper than that. So they said, "Ulerabbi name haktiv shma." So what did Rabbi respond to this question that you should understand in your own language? Ahumi bayalei, Rabbi hold that this is different meaning. He said, "Ashma leoznecha ma sheta motzi mipicha," which means you should make sure that you make the words that you bring forth from your mouth audible to your ears, which means that you must hear every word. If you're mumbling a word and you don't hear yourself, then you hold that it's not fulfillment of the mitzvah. So what did the sages said? The Rabbanan, what did the sages said? Savrelu keman damar, the rabbis hold, like one who said, Lo yishmi'a lozno yatsa, which means they hold that if one did not make the word of Shema audible to his ears, he has nonetheless fulfilled his obligation. So that's a very important, because this issue is a dispute among the Tanaim. Ule Rabbanan nami. So now what the sages explain it, and they said haktiv v'hayu. They said that they should be. What is the v'hayu? So it's a clear indication that Shema should be in Hebrew. So how do you respond to that? Mibayalei shelo yikra lemafreya. That's a very famous thing that we discuss in Purim. One of the questions in the Megillah, can you start chapter 3 and then you go back to chapter 2? Let's say you start chapter 1, now all of a sudden you start chapter 3 and then you want to go back to chapter 3. Is that acceptable or not? It's a question. So one of the things the Rabbanan hold is said, in order for you to do it properly, it's not just that you should do it in every language. You also, the whole purpose of the statement Vehayu is that you should make it in a proper order that the Torah requires, which means the sentences you cannot skip and go back to any sentence. Rabbi, so how Rabbi respond to that? And he said, "Shelo yikra lemafreya menalei." How did Rabbi learn that one may not recite the Shema out of a sequence? Nafkale midvarim hadvarim. As you know, every letter in the Torah has a meaning. So you use the word vehayu hadvarim haele, right? And then you use the word the advarim without hey, which is the two times in two different ways. So he said the fact that they add the letter hey, it means that the whole Shema has to be, this word should be in a proper sequence of order. You cannot skip a line and go back. So what did they said? How they respond to the addition of a letter? V'Rabbanan dvarim hadvarim lo darshi. The rabbi did not expound upon the differences between dvarim and hadvarim regarding to the adding of word. They don't feel that is significant. So we get drawing a very serious conclusion from all of this discussion. So we said lememra. So now you can hold the savar Rabbi, that Rabbi hold kol haTorah kula bekol lashon neemra. So Tosefta here explained that every parsha in the Torah that you have a mitzvah to read it, or according to Meiri, he holds that just general study Torah and reading the Torah, you can do it in every language, not only in a Hebrew. How you prove it? The isal kadatach, that if you come and say that the entire Torah bilshon hakodesh neemra, that it's only in Hebrew, and you are forbidden to change it to different language. Vehayu dekatav rachman al amali. Why in Shema we need to add the word that this word vehayu, you don't need a special emphasis, right? In Shema, why God merciful would need to write in His Torah, and they shall be? If the entire Torah must be recited in Hebrew, why will the Scripture have to teach that law that in regard to Shema, that it shall be. So Istrich, so the rabbi said, yes, there's a reason why you need it. Mishum dichtiv Shema, because it's written here. What does that mean? When you say the word here, that it's maybe read in any language. So it shall be teaches otherwise. So you see here the big heavy dispute.
So since Rabbi specifically said that Shema should be recited in Hebrew, then the implication is, well, if he had to say that about Shema, then the rest of the Torah, obviously, you can recite that in every language, right? So
that's part of this dispute. That's part of this problem.
Okay.
That implies solely in Shema or in entire Torah?
Because of the whole Torah, if it applied to the whole Torah and you knew that, then you wouldn't have to specify it about the Shema.
Good. Then the Mishnah said elsewhere, in a different Mishnayot, the Mishnah said that the Tfilah ne'emeret b'kol lashon, that you can say it in every language, but we emphasize many times that the proper way of prayer is to learn the Hebrew and say it in Hebrew. But the big dispute here is what carry more weight, to say it Hebrew without full understanding, or to say it in any language that you understand, as long as you understand what you're saying. That's the big question.
Now, when specifically here, he's clearly referring to all three passages of Shema, that those have to be read in Hebrew, or simply the declaration Shema in Hebrew.
Another question here. It's another question. Is that applies just the declaration of the whole Shema? We hold that when you're saying Shema, it's applied to everything, all the three paragraphs. But you can go and search and say that he meant to say just the first one. So if you follow this discussion, he said just now, he said, Lememra de Rabbonon Savrei, so this is to say that the rabbis hold, the Kol Torah B'Lshon HaKodesh Ne'emra, so since the entire Torah must be recited in Hebrew, this Al Kaladach B'Kol HaShon Ne'emra, that if you tell me, the enter in mind that they recite in any language, Shema de Katav Rachman Al Amali, so why did the God say here? So that's the whole idea. Istrich mishum dichtiv ve'ayu, because it's written, it's necessary because it's written they shall be, which implies that Shema must be written in Hebrew. So otherwise, the Tanu Rabbanan. So we derive from that another conclusion. Ve'hayu shelo yikra lemafreya. Since the Torah said the word ve'hayu, which means that you cannot come backward. Okay? Next, hadvarim alevavcha, that this word should be upon your heart. What does that mean? Yachol teheh kol ha'parasha tzricha kavana. You remember always that the Gemarah here speaks about b'diavad and lechatchila. Lechatchila is no dispute between both of them. Lechatchila it's Hebrew and with full intent, and every word you should hear. It's all in our language is b'diavad. Yachol teheh kol ha'parasha tzricha kavana. It could be brought that the entire first portion of Shema should require intent, which means that if you don't do it with the full intent, you did not fulfill the mitzvah. Talmud lomar ha'ele, scripture therefore state the word these. Ad kan tzricha kavana. That's a view that said until here the intent is necessary. Mikan va'elach en tzrich kavana divrei Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer hold that only the first statement that need full intent, but the rest no. Omar Rabbi Akiva said, why you think that way? He said, Harei Omer, because it said clearly, Asher anochi metzavcha yom al levavecha, which I command you this day shall be upon your heart. Mikan אתה למד שכל הפרשה כולה צריכה כוונה. So Rabbi Akiva hold that since it's written which I command you, which means it's a past tense, it's implied that the verse recorded require intent. So what is metzavcha, I commanded you, present tense? It indicates that this verse recorded that they require intent. So the whole idea here Tosefta explain that the intent, you cannot limit the intent to just the first portion of Shema, right? That's a view that is applied. That's the first. Omar Rabbi Berachot, Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Berachot bring the conclusion. Halacha ki Rabbi Akiva. What does Rabbi Akiva hold? That you need to have the entire portion full kavanah. So let's just wrap up the conclusion before we go further. When you say the word Shema, Rabbi hold what Shema means? Hashma leoznecha, which means
hear, your ears.
You hear. That's Rabbi. What the sages saw, what the Rabbanan hold, Shema means Haven. Shema b'kol lashon. You can say it in any language. That's the meaning of Shema. But you have to understand. It's not the hearing, it's the understanding. Vehayu. Rabbi hold Vehayu means behavayatan, which means that this word, the way that it's written, that's the way you should say it. Rabbanan, the sages hold, lemafreya, lo lemafreya, that you cannot skip a line and go back. That's the reason vehayu advarim, that should be in order. Hadvarim, why the word hadvarim with hey? Rabbi said from the hey of hadvarim, it means that you cannot skip a line, right, or skip a paragraph, but you have to do it in order. Rabbanan, the sages said that hadvarim is no special significance. So you see the 3 points, the difference between Rabbanan and Hadvarim. I would like to also to add to that a few important halachot. First, the Vilna Gaon, the Gaon Mivilna, said, and I would like to read it straight from his point. He said, we derive from this Mishnah, it's not in your Gemarah, it's in my Gemarah. So they said here, Nifsa ki mitzvot tzrichot kavana, the halacha is that in the mitzvot you need to have full intent, שצורך לכוון ליבו לצאת ידי חובה, that the person must have full intent in order to fulfill the proper obligation. That even though שאף על פי שבגמורה לא סוכם הדבר, even in the Talmud, you don't see it in a full way, נראה שהוא פשט המשנה. The Vilna Gaon said that that's what we should derive from the Mishnah. However, the Magen Avraham hold that mitzvah derabanan, you don't need to have kavanah. So let me just digress for a second. What's the difference between mitzvah derabanan and mitzvah deoraita? Mitzvah deoraita is from the Torah, deoraita in Aramaic meaning the Torah. It's applied to 613 mitzvot. 248 negative, 365 positive, all wrap up of the 613 mitzvot. Mitzvah derabanan, mitzvah of the sages, are 7 additional mitzvot that the sages institute. Anybody knows an example of mitzvah derabanan? Lighting Hanukkah candles, making an eruv. This is a mitzvot and derabanan. Okay? So those 7 mitzvot derabanan, Magen Avraham said that those mitzvot you don't need the kavanah. Which means it's preferable, lechatchila, it should be everything with kavanah. But you still fulfill the mitzvah even without kavanah. However, the Gra hold, he derived from this Mishnah that all the other mitzvot from the Torah, you need to have your mind set, you have to have intent when you do the mitzvah. Okay? And then another important halacha, they said, Mutar likrot kriyat shema bekol lashon. It's not advisable, it's not the way it should be, but if you have a person that doesn't know Hebrew yet, so he or she can say Shema in any language.
That's b'diavad.
Yes, if a person doesn't understand Hebrew, that's what the sages said. But we have the minhag, like many other kehilot, many other communities, that at least in public we're not permitted. Which means individual come, it's a first time for his life in a shul, usually it's a mourner or somebody like that, you really have no clue in Hebrew, you give that person the English part here, and he can say the English part. But as far as public prayer, it's all Hebrew. Okay, next. So what we said here, Eika de matlna ahadetanya. So, after we said that halacha ki Rabbi Akiva, which means that what is the Rabbi Akiva hold, and that's important, Magen Avraham, he said, Kavana me'akevet b'kriyat Shema, which means, what do you understand? You have to say the Shema with full intent from the beginning up to the end, or just the first line? So the answer is lechatchila. All the Shema, all the 3 paragraphs, you have to have full intent. Now I ask you a question. What's by halacha b'di'evet? B'di'evet, if someone doesn't have the full intent. He was spacing out at the middle of the Ahavta, he thought about the stock market. And then when he get to the tzitzis, he talked about real estate. So what happened? So the answer is, according to Shulchan Aruch, or Achaim Samech, that's the halacha, I read it from the כוונה מעכבת בקריאת שמע, הרי בפסוק ראשון בלבד. Which means בדיעבד, if a person doesn't have a full כוונה, apply to the first line. That's בהלכה. Which means that according to Rabbi that said Meir, if you don't have the full intent, the Magen Avraham said, you need to repeat it even in silence, but you need to repeat it.
The declaration or the...
Declaration. That's the reason that we cover our eyes to have the full intent. Remember, that's only b'diavad. So in other words, lechatchila, everything should have the kavanah. B'diavad, if you didn't focus, so if it happens during Shema, that you space out elsewhere, you must repeat it once, twice, 5 times until you have the full kavanah of the words. The rest, lechatchila, it should be kavanah, but b'diavad, it is what it is. Okay. So we said here, Ika de Matlana, the Tanya, Koret, Shema tzach shichaven et libo. One who recites the Shema must recite in his mind the meaning of the word. Rabbi Acha, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda, Omer, Kevan shichiven libo בפרק ראשון, שהוא בנו צריך. He hold that one, he directed his mind to the meaning of the word in the first paragraph, שהוא בנו צריך. He is no longer required to concentrate. So that's the halacha. Amar Rabbi Barchan, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Lachak Rabbi Acha, Shema Mishum Rabbi Yehuda. So here is the clear conclusion of the Gemarah. That's by the way halacha. It's applied only b'diavad, only the first Shema and not the rest. Okay. Tanya Idach. Now we go to another braita. Vehayu. Since we use the word vehayu in Chelbi, in Shema, shelo yikra lemafreya. It has to have a. You cannot go, for example, the ve'ahavta, and then tzitzit, and then v'haya im shamua. You can't do that. You have to do in a out of a sequence order. Al levavecha, upon your heart. What does that mean, upon your heart? This is a dispute. Rabbi Zutra omer, ad kan mitzvat kavana. Rabbi Zutra hold that until here is the requirement of intent. What does that mean, until here? So he said, he hold that the entire section of Shema, mikan va'elach mitzvat kriya, from here and onward, is the requirement of recital, which is that he is separate between 2 things. One is the recitation of Shema, and one is the proper intent in your heart. So he used the word al levavecha to emphasize that it's up to this point it should be upon your heart. Rabbi Yoshua hold, ad kan mitzvat kriya. This word require that here, the first section of Shema, require of recitation. Mikan va'elach mitzvat kavana. From here and onward is the require of intent. Why? Mishna mikan va'elach mitzvat kriya. From what the reason is that from the onward, from the second section of Shema, different, that require recitation of the Shema. Dichtiv ledaber bam, because the text said to speak to them. Hachana miktiv v'dibarta bam, and he also said you should speak to them. Okay, so what we understand. So you see here that the mitzvah of dibur, the mitzvah of saying it, okay, the reading apply also to the first one. So he explained it, hachikamar, this is what Rabbi Zutra actually said. Ad kan mitzvat kavana ukriya, mikan ve'elach belo kavana. Ho 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 ho. He said that the whole idea is that it's advisable, preferable, versus it's still you still pass. You still pass the mitzvah even you didn't have the proper kavanah. So he said, Hachikamar, this is the meaning. Ad kan mitzvat kavanah v'kriya. Up to this point you have the mitzvah of kavanah and reading. Mikan va'elach kriya. From that point is even without kavanah, just by reading you fulfill the mitzvah. Mishna. So what's the read different? But what's the reason that until here, the first section different, that you said that this is the required for intent and not God? Ad kan mitzvat kavanah ukriya dechtiv al levavecha v'dibarta bam. Ha'achana me'al levavchem v'dibarta bam. Okay, so what's the difference? He said that up to this point, you should say al levavecha and v'dibarta bam. There is 2 different things. One is al levavecha, upon your heart, and one v'dibarta bam, you should say this word. So these are 2 different things. Everyone understand this? What? Any question before we go further? What we learn here, that there are 2 different things. One is upon your heart, and one you should speak to them. ההוא מבא אלה לחבי יצחק דאמר, ושמתם את דבריי לאלה, צריכה שתהיה שימה כנגד הלב. So he hold that when you use the word ושמתם את דבריי אלה, okay, what is it? You should put this word upon your heart. It's the Kriyat Shema, it's within the mitzvah of tefillin, that you're putting the tefillin against your heart. Okay? So in other words, what Rab Zutra hold that the first section of Shema is the mitzvah of kavana and mitzvah of kriya, mitzvah of intent and mitzvah of reading, right? Because this is two foundations. One is upon your heart, al levavecha, and the other one is v'dibarta bam, you should say this word. Now, since you said in the second portion, v'samtem et dvarai ele, that the Torah said you should put your heart, all this word upon your heart, so it's also kavana. Okay, so again, there is a two school of thought. This school of thought hold that the second reason, that the second recitation of Al Levavchem, upon your heart, it's applied not to the kavanah of the word, it's applied to what? To the putting tefillin against your heart. Okay? Now, we go deeper. We said, Ad kan mitzvat kriya, mikan va'elach mitzvat kavanah. Up to this point is the mitzvah of the reading. From that point, it's a mitzvah of the intent. Mishum dechtiv al levavchem, aktiv al levavecha. Why it's written twice? The first paragraph of Shema say al levavchem, al levavcha, and the second paragraph said al levavchem. Looks like repetitions, and we know that every letter, every word in the Torah has a meaning. So he said, Hachikamar, this actually he said, Ad kan mitzvat kriya ubechavana. And here the first section is the requirement of reading, reciting with full intent. Mikan ve'elach kavana belo kriya. From here onward is the intent requirement without the recitation. That is an opinion, which means the second portion onward, a silent reading suffice. That's not the halacha, but that's his opinion. Hachikamar. So he said that's what he derived from that. Ad kan mitzvat kriya v'kavana, mikan ve'elach mitzvat kriya belo kavana. Until here the first section is required to reciting and the intent. From here onward, the intent without the recitation. Mashna ad kan mitzvat kriya v'kavana. Why you divided between the two? Dichtiv al levavecha v'dibarta b'hem. Because it's upon your heart and you should speak this word. Hataname here there too. Aktiv al levavchem adaber bam. The second section is written upon your heart and speak to them. So both requirements apply to the section as well. So he said, Ahu b'divrei Torah aktiv. That verse that you speak is written concerning words of Torah. And that's what the Torah meant. Agmiru banaychu Torah, which means God said that the merciful one is saying that you teach your children the word of Torah, so that they learn to be able to speak them, which means study them. So there are two different concepts here. One is the lip service, is saying the word of Shema. Another one is saying it with the proper kavanah, with the proper intent. And is a new one that said that you should teach, you should comprehend it and focus them, so you'll be able to speak them, to study them, and teach them to your future generation. Right? So this is another meaning of the word v'limaletem otam, that you should teach your children. So we see that the Tanu Rabbanan is another Braita said, Shema Israel. Hear, O Israel, right? The first word of Shema. Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is our only one. Ad kan tzricha kavanat Rab Meir. Rab Meir hold that what is the proper kavanah, the proper focusing on the Rab Meir hold that the intent requirement apply to the first verse. That's what Rashi said, right? Amarav Rava hold halacha k'Rabbi Meir. The halacha, the law, according to the Rab Meir, according to Rav, and that's what Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim said in 60. That the first one is the absolute minimum that the person should focus. That's the minimum of the minimum. In other words, if you don't focus on the line of Shema, you do not fulfill the mitzvah. You need to repeat it until your mind will be in the proper setup. So in other words, if you start saying Shema and you think about the stock market, it's too bad. You have to repeat. Then you focus again, you realize you're thinking about your doctor's appointment, then you have to repeat. Until you fully focus from the beginning to the end. And he added to that and he said, Sumchos Somer, Sumchos Hol, Tanya, Sumchus is the name of the rabbi. כל המעריך באחד, מעריכין לו ימיו ושנתיו. That's important halacha. You know that we said Hashem Echad, at the end of the line of Shema we said God is one. So he said whoever prolongs the pronunciation of the word Echad, the one at the end of the first order, which means Echad, you do it in a long one, you start with the Echad, right? So he said that your days will be prolonged, right? That's the Gemarah, like said measure for measure, which means that you should have the proper intent while you make it long. Echa, right? So it's long one. And he adds to that and he said, Omar Ravacha Bar Yaakov Uve Dalet. So he add that you have to not only say Echa long, but even the Dalet at the end you have to focus on the Dalet as well, which means Echad, and he add, Omar Rav Ashi ובלבד שלא יחטוף בחטא. It's another important point that you not hurry to pronounce the letter Chet, which means Echad. You see the Chet, I didn't focus. What should be Echad, right? So in other words, that every word, Rav Ashi warns that one should not, in order to stretch out the letter of Dalet, hasten the pronunciation of the Chet. So he said that you have to vocalize the Cha, the Ch, the Shva, intent of Kamatz, Ch, Echad, right? So that's important that should not just running the word. And now is a little story. Rabbi Yirmiyah Havayativ Kamed Rabbi Chia Barabba. Chaz Yedav Marich Tuva. He said before that rabbi, and he noticed that the rabbi make the echad long. Amar lei. He said to him, "Kevan de'amlichte lemala ve'lemata u'le'arba ruchot hashamayim tu lo tzricha." So since you are, in a sense, recognize, you mentally acknowledge, okay, the God is the ruler, is the one who in charge for heaven above and earth below, and the 4 different directions. So you don't need to have, continuing. So he applied here that when you focus, you're thinking about all this secret meaning of that Hashem is controlling the 4 corners of the world, the same as the 4 corners of the tzitzit, and it's applied to what we pray early, that the Jews will come from all the 4 corners of the world, that fulfillment to Isaiah prophecy, that they all gather to one land, and is sense individual, that all the forces will come to serve Hashem. That's saying that all the people around the corner will fulfill the dream of getting together from all the world to, right? So all of this you have in your mind when you say Dalet, which is the Dalet is 4. The numerical value of Dalet is 4. Mm. So he warned him that when you're doing that, you basically maybe fall beyond the rest of the congregation, and you don't recite Shmoneh Esrei prayer with them, which is required. One of the things we need to do as a community, we need to pray together. If you're doing all this so long, then you fall behind, and everybody else is in a Shmoneh Esrei, and you're still stuck over there. Right? It happens sometimes. So he said it has to be in a proportion. Right? So Shulchan Aruch said that we should do it, we should focus, we should add in Echad that Hashem is controlling all the world, and the Chet should not be bechataf, but should be everything in a proportion, in a sense, especially if you're part of the community, otherwise you're missing the Shmoneh Esrei. Amar Rav Natan bar Ukva, Amar Rav Yehuda, one of the rabbis said, Al levavcha be'amidah, upon your heart, it should recite while standing in place. It's a even Beit Hillel hold that one may recite the Shema while walking or walking about, etc. It's a big controversy if you can do the Shema while you're doing other things. The halacha is that you have to focus, and you cannot do other things. You cannot sell merchandise or do things while saying Shema. You have to have focus in what you're saying. So his opinion, I ask a question, can you do it while you're standing? So his opinion that hold that you can do it, right? But the halacha is, he said, that if you are walking, let's say you walk in the field, and now it's a time to say Shema, right? So you have to stop, you have to stand, close your eyes, cover them if you can, and you have to have kavanat halev, you have to have the heart, the proper intent when you say the first line. So in that sense, you have to stop while you're walking, and that line must have the full intent. That's what he meant. So he said, "Al levavecha ba'amidah, mikan va'elach lo." From that point and onward, "Al levavecha sakadatach." Do you really think that one required to stand while reciting the upon your heart? He said, that part you have to do it. From now on, onward not. Rabbi Yochanan amar, kol ha'parasha kula ba'amidah. Rabbi Yochanan hold that the entire paragraph should be, you should stop, you should focus from Shema until the end of the paragraph. ואז לרבי יוחנן תמי, רבי יוחנן hold the opinion, the אומר רבא בר חנא אומר רבי יוחנן, that's the halacha, כי רבי אחש אמר משום רבי יהודה, that's the halacha, right? That who held that one must concentrate while reciting the entire first section of Shema. Because since the intent is requirement for the entire first section, so one must recite the entire passage while standing in place, right? So the Rosh suggested that the standing requirement go behind any concentration of intent and concentration, right? So it should be, as you see, that the intent is very, very important. That it shows the seriousness and the sincerity. So everyone agreed that the best lechatchila is everything should be in proper kavanah. Tanu Rabbanan, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The rabbi said this line of Shema. What does that mean? Zo kriyat Shema shel Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. That's the recitation of Shema that the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. There's a opinion that say that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi spent all his day teaching Torah, which he did not wish to interrupt. So the first verse of Shema he held as a Torah obligation. That's what the Meforshim said. But the Gemarah and Shabbos rule that the Torah study is interrupt for the in order to recite the Shema, but Rabbi hold that that's apply only the first line, right? But since he's so much involved in Torah studies, the question if the rest needs. So he said, Omar lei, Rav le Rabbi Chia lo chazinan le Rabbi dem kabel lo chut shamayim. So he said that I did not ever see Rabbi Yehuda Nasi accept upon himself the yoke of heavens sovereignly, which means he began to teach the Torah, as he said, at the time of the Shema, and once the time arrived, Rav never saw him pause to recite it. So he said, Amar le barpachti, what's wrong with you? You know, why are you saying that? He said, B'sha'a shema'avir yadav al panav, bless you. The time that Rabbi passed his hand upon his face, mekabel alav ol malchut shamayim, he accepting the yoke of heaven upon himself. So it's important to say to mention few halachot. First, it's a well-known minhag. It's basically Kabbalistic minhag, but it's carry a very important meaning that you should cover your eyes when you do Shema, because that will avoid you from being distracted with other things that your eye may lead you. By doing that, you focus properly. And that's what's the minhag of Rabbi, that he cover his eyes when he's doing Shema. In other words, there's all kind of interruptions when you're praying. Either in order to avoid other things or to have the proper focusing when you say it. Chozer v'gomra. So after concluding his lecture to his students, so Rabbi returned and complete the Shema, or eno chozer v'gomra. Since he was teaching Torah, and that's very important precedent to anything, should we return and say it? And Bar Kapara omer eno chozer v'gomra. He did not return and complete the Shema. Rabbi Shimon Berebi omer chozer v'gomra. So even Torah study, Rabbi Shimon Berebi hold that he needs to repeat when it's come to the time of saying it. So he said, Amar le Rab Bar Kapar le Rabbi Shimon Berebi bishlam al dida ma'ina eno chozer v'gomra. It's good, in my opinion, that said that you don't need to repeat to return. Hainu demea da Rabbi Ashmate. It is why every day Rabbi will seek out the teaching and contain the topic of Exodus, the by Yetziat Mitzrayim, because the whole idea of the mitzvah of saying the Exodus from Egypt is part of the obligation. But according to your opinion, let's say that Rabbi did not return complete, did return complete the Shema. So lama li la'adure? Why he needs to repeat it since it's already mentioned the Yetziat Mitzrayim, mentioned the Exodus. So he said, כדי להזכיר יציאת מצרים בזמן, there's an obligation to say the Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt, in a proper time, which is the proper time of Shema. So the whole idea is that the sages decree that the Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus, be mentioned at the time of the Shema recital, even though a mention of any time of the entire day is valid, but the proper is that time, bizmana. Let's conclude. Amar Rabbi Ila Brei de Rav Shmuel Bar Marta Mishmei de Rav, this is the name of Rabbi. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, v'ne'enas b'shena yatsa. A person starts saying Shema and boom, he overcome by sleep, yatsa. He nonetheless, right, discharge his obligation. He fulfill his obligation. So the Gemarah does not mean that he fell asleep and did not complete the Shema. It's the idea that he recite the rest of Shema while he's half asleep. He wasn't there. That's what Ritva said, right? So he said, Omar Rav Nachman ledaru avdei bifsuka kama tzaharan. So in the place of Daw, his name of the place, he said the dozing off while reciting the first verse of Shema is discomfort me so that I become totally conscious and alert. Tfeilot etzaharan, which means more not. In other words, you should go after me to make sure that I'm focusing the first one. Further not. So he said, Omar Rav Yosef Brei de Rabba. That's his conclusion here. He said, Avuch echia v'aved, how your father did. He said, Amar le b'psuka kama v'mitzar nafshe, tfeilo v'mitzar nafshe. The first line he used to discomfort himself, to remain alert, but the more he will not discomfort himself. So again, we derive from that what is preferable, what is the proper. So if a person is fall asleep, that's halacha. Im haya yashen, you said in Shulchan Aruch, im haya yashen, if a person fall asleep, me'orerim oto, you should wake him up, sheyikra pasuk rishon, the first line, kshu er mamash, so the person is fully alert. Mikan va'elach, from that point, he can be, have those while he's saying Shema. So halacha is it's not lechatchila, but b'diavad, at least the first line has to be before kavanah. By the way, if you remember the story about the Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash, that the Kohen Gadol, especially if he wasn't alert on Yom Kippur, his Am Haaretz, they used to wake him up. The Kohanim used to do all kind of things to wake him up. But again, the halacha is, if it happens the first line, that's the minimum of the minimum, that he needs to have full kavanah.